Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Autry, Mr. Bessie, and distinguished guests that are here today at this university. I have been very moved by what has been said and learned a great deal today, firsthand about a problem that a prime minister or head of state faces in these days when we're calling for less government, and yet every special interest doesn't want you to touch them. Now, I'm very honored to be back here again this year, but I thought maybe I was getting a little older to be here this time. They say that middle age is when you're sitting at home on Saturday night and the telephone rings and you hope that it's not for you. And last night, as I was at the reception and the dinner, so many people said, "You're looking wonderful." Well, I knew what that meant. There are three ages: youth, middle-aged, and you're looking wonderful. But I have had the privilege too, Mr. Prime Minister, of traveling this year. I've been in Poland and Hungary, Italy, had the privilege of spending time with the Pope at the Vatican, France and Germany, Britain, and as I said more recently in Latin America. And almost everywhere I go, I found both leaders and ordinary individuals asking one basic question: is there hope for peace in our generation? And people are asking the question because hope is a scarce commodity in today's world. They're asking it because the dominant characteristic of life today, it seems to me, is a climate of fear. A fear of the future, a fear of a world that seems almost out of control, fear of economic disaster, fear of conflict and war, fear of political and social forces which seem to be pushing the world relentlessly to the brink of chaos. Our world has always faced massive problems. We say that history will repeat itself and somehow we'll get out it. We may not, because there's a new element in history that's never been there before: technology. During World War II, Professor Albert Einstein helped bring a German photographer to the United States, and Einstein never liked his picture taken, and he never liked any picture he ever saw of himself. But because this man was a friend of his from Germany, he agreed to, and he was a photographer, agreed to pose for a picture. And they began to talk about the world, and Einstein was very sad. And he talked about his despair over his formula EMC2 and his letter to President Roosevelt that had made the atomic bomb possible, and that his scientific research had resulted in the death of so many human beings. And he grew silent. His eyes had a look of immense sadness. There was a question and a reproach in them. At that moment, the photographer took the picture. And that was the picture that Einstein liked most of all. And that's the picture you see of Einstein so often today. But in that moment, the photographer asked Einstein, "So you don't believe that there will ever be peace?" "No," said Einstein. "As long as there will be man, there will be wars." And yet, we're not just living through another period of history exactly like that of all others because of technology. What kind of leadership, you're leaders, all of you are leaders, what kind of leadership will it take to solve our problems? What must the characteristics of a true leader be in our world? I'd like to mention 4 today. And each of these are personal qualities of leadership. For I agree with Peter McLeod, the chairman and chief executive officer of Xerox. An executive's personal values play a role in his ability to lead others, he said. The first quality I mention is integrity. Integrity has to do with soundness, completeness, and unity and consistency. When we speak of integrity as a moral value, it means a man is the same on the inside as he claims to be on the outside. There's no discrepancy between what he says and what he does, between his walk and his talk. A man of integrity can be trusted, and he's the same person alone in his hotel room 1,000 miles from home as he is at church or in his community or home. And this is very important because I had at least 3 people last night tell me the problems they're having in their home with a child or between each other. And at your age, that becomes a great problem. especially if you travel. And integrity is indispensable in front of your children if you're to hold them and keep them. Tom Clausen, the president of the Bank of America, has said that integrity is not some impractical notion dreamed up by naive do-gooders. Our integrity is the foundation, the very basis of our ability to even do business. In a man's personal life, integrity provides confidence in the face of uncertainty. And one of the greatest chief executive officers of all time and political leaders of all time was King Solomon of Israel. And he wrote these words in the old book, Proverbs. He said, the man of integrity walks securely, but he who takes crooked paths is going to be found out. One of the greatest gifts that God gives a man is the ability to lie down at night satisfied with who he is and what he's done that day, because he's acted with integrity. And if you're to be a leader who makes a lasting and positive impact on our world, you must be a man of integrity or a woman of integrity. The second quality necessary for leadership is personal security. I do not mean this in the sense of physical security or job security, but I'm instead talking about personal emotional security that Dr. Menninger will talk to you about. The kind which comes from knowing and accepting who you are, why we're here, and where we're going. I do not believe that that kind of security comes from careers alone. Dr. Glenn Swager, a psychiatrist who conducts the executive seminars at the Menninger Clinic in Topeka, has said, the trouble with total devotion to a career is that businesses are not set up to provide emotional satisfaction. If the organization changes or your job changes, the emotional satisfaction you get from your work will decrease sharply, and you're left with no other source of support. And then when retirement comes, you have nothing else to do. His recommendation for avoiding that type of vulnerability is to diversify your emotional portfolio. And part of that diversification should include a proper emphasis on the spiritual aspect of life. You're not just a body and a mind. You're a spirit created in the image of God and for fellowship with God. And that's one reason that I believe the only real source of lasting personal security is to know God himself. Only in him do we find out who we are, why we're here, and where we're going. As a person comes to know God in a real and personal way, he becomes truly secure. And besides integrity and personal security, the third quality which is necessary in a leader is a sense of priority. This is the ability to separate the important from the unimportant, the critical from the trivial, vital from the insignificant, the eternal from the temporary. It is necessary for our daily task, but it is also true for the overall direction of our lives. And until a man gets his priorities in life straight, everything else is going to be out of order. Dr. Roy Menninger, who is here, said, as successful executives, most of you are adept at planning, but most of you don't give much attention to your own life plan and the direction you're going and why. Most of us live from day to day, he said, so swamped by the pressures and details of daily life that we don't take the time to think about our goals in life. When Jesus was asked to state life's greatest priority, he said, you should love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your spirit. That's your first priority. If you don't get that straight, the rest of life can become a disaster. He said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added. Once that priority has been established, then the rest of life can be seen and lived in proper perspective. Without a proper attitude toward God, everything else in life will eventually take on more importance than it's supposed to have. And it takes effort to establish and maintain the right priorities and goals. Then there's one final quality I would mention briefly, and the quality of vision. This is the quality of seeing what can be and ought to be done and how to get there. I'm sure you all know companies where management has lost its vision, and gradually the business deteriorates and becomes outmoded. But I have in mind here something greater than just vision for your business. Our world today desperately needs leaders of vision. Men and women who see the larger picture. They believe in the big picture. It's far too easy for any of us to become involved in a narrow, self-centered way in the pursuit of our own little goals. And that's why I like YPO. You have a big vision. You see the big picture of the whole world and all of its complexities in a way that few organizations do. A man that refuses that obligation is not a true leader, no matter how successful his balance sheet may be. As a Christian, I believe the highest vision we can have is the determination to do God's will in this world. And that means we thrust ourselves into the great issues of our day and accept the responsibility to be leaders in shaping the future. And so I challenge you today as leaders of our world and the world of tomorrow to be leaders of integrity, leaders of personal security, leaders with a sense of priority, and leaders with a vision. But most of all, as a Christian, I challenge you to be individuals who are committed to Jesus Christ. Because only in Him can you know what it fully means to have integrity, personal security, priority, and vision. And as we yield ourselves to Him and come to a personal relationship with Him and then walk day by day with Him and follow His Word, then we discover the qualities of leadership we need and also the strength we need. For He alone, of all the men of human history, exhibited these qualities of leadership perfectly in His own life. It's been said that when God made the oyster, He guaranteed it absolute economic and social security. He built the oyster in a house, his shell, to shelter and protect him from his enemies. And when hungry, the oyster simply opens his shell and food rushes in for him. He has freedom from want. But when God made the eagle, He declared the blue sky is the limit. Build your own house. So the eagle builds on the highest mountain. Storms threaten every day. For food, he flies through miles of rain and snow and wind. Which would you rather be, an oyster or an eagle? It's my prayer that the words of the great Jewish prophet Isaiah would ring true in your lives as you rise to the challenge before you. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. This can be your experience as you commit yourself to God and determined by His grace to help give fresh leadership to a troubled world. No matter how many pessimists we hear, and if we don't, there is a strong possibility that you will witness an Armageddon in our generation, or an Armageddon in your business, or in your personal life, or in our world. Thank you.